Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. My name is Danny Jugan. I'm the owner and lead developer for Axis Football, and in this video I wanted to walk through some of the new changes that you can expect in Axis Football 2019, specifically for franchise mode. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into a brand new franchise that has been created, and before I dive into the new features and what I want to show you guys, I want to give a little bit of an overview and insight into Axis Football, its current state, and where we plan on going from here. So if you followed the game at all, we've always tried to make it clear that we believe our game stands on three main components, and that is simulation gameplay, a deep franchise mode, and high amounts of customization. And those are the three areas that we want to continue to improve year after year. Now, with the size of our team and the budgetary constraints that we have, we aren't able to really focus on each of those areas in depth each year. So typically what we do, at least until we're able to do more, is we always improve all three areas, but we typically focus on one of those areas more each year. So if we go back 2 years, that's when we implemented the uniform editor. We did tons of customization there. Last year, we focused a ton on gameplay. We drastically improved the playbook, made it a lot deeper, added a lot of physics and animations and that sort of thing. And while we do that every year, last year was the main focus for that. We also did a good bit on franchise mode last year, and the focus for 2019 has continued to be franchise mode. As we move forward to 2020 and 21 and that sort of thing, we will shift the focus away from franchise mode into gameplay and some customization options, but knowing all the while that we are going to continue to improve in those three areas. So with that said, you can expect lots of new franchise features in Axis Football 2019. I will cover the gameplay improvements and the customization improvements in a later video. Okay, so what can you expect new for franchise in 2019? So I'm going to show you guys one aspect of what is new this year. So if you played 2018 or 2017, you'll remember that there were only 3 tabs before. And so we've added a personnel and front office tab. We've kind of repurposed it a little bit. There used to only be 3. And now we have a personnel tab. And this is where you can manage your team and the players. So depth chart, player contracts, trades, all that sort of stuff. There's a new team morale meter here that we'll cover later. But I'm going to hop over to the front office menu. And you can kind of see what we've got here. And what I want to focus on in this video is scouting and drafting, because that's an area that I think we had a lot of room for improvement, and we wanted to really change the overall draft experience for the user. As we've gone through the NFL offseason and all of the excitement and hype of free agency and the draft and how all of that shakes down, we were looking for ways that we can reproduce that inside of Axis Football. And so I want to show you what we've got. So where I'm going to start is inside of the scouting window. So I'm going to pull this up. Here's the scouting window that is brand new in 2019. At the top left here, you'll see your scout. You're actually going to hire and manage a coaching staff and scouts. We're going to cover coaching staffs in more detail in another video. But know that you have 4 scouts that you have on your staff, and those scouts have ratings. We can see that our Western Region scout is a B+. The rating of your scout will affect how accurate your estimations are for the players. So the better the scout, the more accurate the ratings are for the players that they're scouting. So the idea here is you have a couple different things that you can do inside of the scouting window. What you want to do is you're going to be looking for areas of weakness in your team. Okay, so if you know that your team really needs a quarterback or a linebacker or whatever it is, those are the areas that you're going to scout. And so you can optionally inside of this window, purchase the National Scouting Report. And what this does is this is a report that gives you an idea of how good players are by position across the 4 regions where you scout. So for example, if you know that you are looking for a linebacker, you might choose to purchase this report so that you don't do a bunch of scouting in a region that doesn't have any good linebackers. Okay, so here I'll go in here and show you how this do. Now the scouting report does cost money, so you have to choose whether or not that you're going to want to purchase this. I'm going to go ahead and purchase it, and you can kind of see exactly what we have here. So quarterbacks across the board are really good in each region. So that means that this draft class has a ton of really good quarterbacks spread across all 4 regions. If we compare that to linebackers, for example, there aren't a whole lot of good linebackers in the draft. Certainly we wouldn't want to look in the Northeast or the Central regions for linebackers because there just aren't good ones. Okay, so this kind of gives you some insight into where the good players are and how you want to go about scouting them, and adds a little bit of strategy there. So with this information, let's pick running backs. So we know that the Central region has decent running backs, and the West has kind of the lower end running backs. So what I can do is then I'm going to pop over to the Central region, and we can see that for each region we have a scouting focus. We can tell our scouts to focus on up to 3 positions in those areas. So let's just say we want to focus on running backs and wide receivers, and that's all that we want to focus on. So we can actually set this last one to none. So that's going to give us a list of players in that region that match the positions that we're scouting for. Okay. So notice we just have wide receivers and running backs now. If we take a look at this, the next column is the estimated overall. This is how good our scout thinks this player is going to be when we draft them. But this is an estimation. So this rating might not be accurate. And how accurate this rating is a formula based off of how much we've scouted them, their scouting percentage, and how good our scout is. So if we have a really good scout and we've scouted them a bunch, you can bet that this rating is going to be really accurate. If you don't have a good scout and you haven't scouted them a bunch, you really don't know how good that player is. So they might say they're an A+, but they really might be a C. Or they might say that they're a C, but they really might be an A+. And so this is where you've got to use some strategy and scout them more. Now, if we look on the left side again, we see that each scout each year has up to 3 scout points that they can use. And this is how we can get a little bit of more information about the player. And so using a scout point will increase the scout percentage. So let's just say we want to scout Mark Ryan. This is who we think we want as our running back. So I'm going to spend a scout point here. We can see it's used. The scout percentage went up, and this actually dropped down to a B+. So we, at this point, know that, okay, maybe he's not quite as good as we thought he was, but he's still a B+. He's still really good. And again, this is where some strategy comes into play. So we could, at this point, knowing that we want to draft a running back out of the Central, let's just say we've made that decision, we can decide, all right, we've got 3 decent running backs all in this area, all in the Central region. We can choose to spend another scout point on Mark Ryan to see if this is really what he is, or we can kind of take a risk and send our scout out to scout these guys because they might actually be better than what their rating is. So I'm going to use one on this guy just to see what happens. Oops, wrong button. Spend scout point here. And he actually stays as a B, and I'm going to spend a scout point here. He stays as a B. So it looks like Mark Ryan's going to be our best choice, even though our scout percentage isn't super high. So that kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to be doing in the scouting window. The overall goal here is we're trying to find what players are actually going to be good. And we're using our scouts and our scout points and the scouting report and all that sort of stuff to kind of figure that out. So once we have done that, and we can do that all throughout the year, all throughout the season, then we can go into our draft prospects. And what this window has we've got 4 different tabs across the top. If we look at the first one, this is actually a copy of what we will see when we actually go through the draft. And the overall rating here, again, these are players that said they're going to enter the draft at the end of the season. And the rating that we have here is what our scout thinks they're going to be. Okay, so these are players all throughout the region. And if I go over to the running back, you'll notice that we have a couple highlighted in yellow. The ones that are highlighted in yellow are ones that we have actually gone through and scouted. Okay, so you'll recognize the names from the ones that we've scouted. This is going to help you as you get into the draft, knowing which players that you were interested in during the year, which players that you've scouted, so you can actually highlight them a little bit easier. So it looks like Mark Ryan, and again, it shows you scouted up here, appears to be the best running back in the draft. Okay, so we'll have our eye on him, and the others are kind of down here as well. Again, for these other players, we didn't scout them. So our scouts have an estimated overall of B, but these ratings could be higher, could be lower. We don't really know. The ones we've scouted, we know these ratings are pretty accurate. Okay, so let's take a look at these other tabs because, like I mentioned before, we wanted to really improve the overall draft experience. So if you go to Team Guide, I haven't played any games so far this season, but at the end of the season, the team performance shows you how you ranked in the league. So if I actually go back and simulate a couple games and then go into the Team Guide, you'll see here that our simulated stats give us an idea of what we're looking for. So for example, points allowed, we were 26, which is not very good, but our rush and pass defense were decent, so maybe this indicates that special teams need some work. That's the purpose of this. You look at how you ranked across the league in various categories, and you can use that to figure out what areas of your team you might want to focus on. All right, so if we look here, our team guide is divided into a couple different sections. We have areas of need. So these are current starters that are rated lowest among the team. Okay, so of our current starters, these guys are the ones that have the lowest ratings. So we see that we've got 2 offensive linemen and a linebacker. So we could use this information to say, all right, well, maybe we want to find an offensive lineman in the draft. And so what this guide does is it shows you if we wanted to replace Patrick Hernandez, for example, then we could look at this guy in the draft. Okay, and same thing for here. So if we wanted to replace our linebacker, this is the best available linebacker that we could pull in for him. If we go down one more, if we're interested in just finding the best player available in the draft, we could look down in this bottom section. So for example, the best 3 players in the draft that are available right now, we've got a defensive back here, Roy Marshall, and then it shows you if we drafted him, who it would replace on the team. All right, so for example, if you look right here at Brian Cunningham, we would be drafting him, but our current starter is already really good. So this wouldn't be a super good pick, but either the bottom ones would be. There's 2 good defensive backs in the draft, and we could be replacing a C player on our team. So that's the kind of idea that we could use in the team guide. It's supposed to help you see areas of weakness on your team and how you can use that information to make strategic decisions in the draft. I'll show you the team summary. So the team summary shows who you actually have picked so far in the draft. Because we haven't picked anybody, this is blank, but it does show you how many picks you have per round. All right, so for example, if we were to go in to trade, and let's say we trade away a draft pick, so we're going to trade away our 2nd round pick for one of their players, let's just say one of their tight ends. Then when we go into the draft and go into team summary, you'll notice that we don't have a pick in the 2nd round. Okay, so this helps you see not only how many picks you have per round, but also the players that you have drafted. So once we actually pick in round one, the player that we picked would show up here. And the last tab, this shows the overall draft summary. Again, because we haven't gotten into the draft, I'll show you in just a second. That will show what each team picks in each round of the draft. So I'm going to simulate this whole first season and give you an idea of how it looks at the very end. So we are simulate the rest of the playoffs. Okay, and then when we go into the draft, let's just say, all right, that running back that we really wanted is available. We've got the 10th pick, so we're going to go ahead and draft that player. And when we go into the team guide, excuse me, the team summary, we can see that we picked him in round one. And when we go to the draft summary, we can see who each team picked, and this would be separated by round. So notice that we didn't get a pick in the second round. We should have picked right here, but we traded it to Atlanta. So Atlanta got to pick both the 30th position of the second round, and they took our pick, which was the 10th pick. And so right now we are on the clock in the third round with the 10th pick in that round. So this lets you kind of see what other teams are doing. And the team guide updates continually, so you can see who's still available. If you remember earlier when we looked at that, the two defensive backs, the same player who was a defensive back was listed in that bottom position. He's been drafted, so they're no longer the first available. So you can continue to check the team guide to see, okay, it's now the third round. Who could I potentially replace on my team, or what good players are still left in the draft? And then everything will reset with the scouting window. You'll get a brand new draft class that you can scout, and that process will continue. Again, what we were trying to do is we're trying to create as much realism as we can. We're trying to create a really deep franchise mode where the decisions that you make matter, and you aren't just making the same decisions without putting any thought behind it. We didn't want to create just a bunch of button clicking where you were doing the same thing every year. We wanted to give you information and let you take that information and analyze it in order to make strategic decisions that made sense for your team and the situation that you were in at that point in your franchise. That's the goal, and that's what we're going to continue to focus on. So that's kind of an overview of the new draft experience that you can expect in Axis Football 2019. That is by far not the entirety of the changes we have made to franchise mode. I've hinted at a couple throughout this video. We are going to continue to release more information as we approach our release in 2019. We are looking at a roughly early September release. We're going to try to have a much more synchronized release across all platforms. And that for this year in 2019 will be iOS and Android, PC on Steam, Xbox One, and PS4. So we plan to hit all of the platforms in 2019. Some of you have noted that we did not release on mobile in 2018. We do plan on releasing mobile this year. So what you see here on the screen will be available in mobile, so you'll have a really cool deep franchise experience that you can take with you on the go, in addition to your consoles and PC. All right, so that about wraps it up here. As always, we want to know what your feedback and thoughts are on this. You can reach out to us on social media, Twitter, Facebook. Also take emails through our website, axisleague.com. And thanks for tuning in.